speaking. We ask that you keep your camera on at all times so that the other participants can see you. If you need to step away for a moment, you can turn the camera off and turn it back on when you return. Please put your cell phone in silent mode to avoid any interruptions during the video conference. We recommend that you maintain proper posture and position yourself adequately in front of your computer. Simultaneous interpretation will be provided for this meeting via the Zoom platform. At the bottom of the Zoom screen, you will see a globe icon that says Interpretation. Click the icon and select the language you wish to listen to. It is very important that you select the language in which you will speak, as this will facilitate the interpretation. At the end of the video, please remain silent for 30 seconds. Afterwards, the moderator will begin the meeting. Thank you very much for your attention.
Bueno, buenos días y buenas
Good
noches.
morning, good evening, good afternoon, especially for Dr. Aurelio. And thank you very much to all of those joining us today, not only in the Caribbean, but also at the other end of the hemisphere. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar on notification. We will be covering different and very interesting points of view today. This will be one of two webinars that will be dealing with notification. For those of you who do not know me, I am Erica Calderon Suarez, and I work for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. I would like to share with all of you this initiative focusing on training, prevention, and response for African swine fever and other transboundary diseases. We are a interagency group under the GFTAT group, and we are composed of several institutions, including ICA as the coordinating agency, but also the WOAH, FAO, CAFSA, CARIVET, OIRSA, CBP, CAN, and the COPEC, also the USDA and other international agencies. It is a true pleasure to be sharing these webinars with all of you, and we've prepared them on a weekly basis. We are meeting on a weekly basis to reach you all for the preparation of these topics. Let me remind you that all of these webinars are available in the ICA platform. We will be sharing the link here so that you can receive feedback and give us feedback also on these webinars that have taken place for almost 2 years now. They are being transmitted with Spanish, English, French, and English interpretation, and we are here on Zoom and also on social media. We will officially begin now with today's presentation. Just for you to know, let me make some brief opening remarks to our manager of AHFS here at ICA, Dr. Jose Urdas. You have the floor. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Good morning to everyone, or good afternoon. Welcome and to this series of webinars, preparation for control and response to African swine fever and other transboundary diseases. In the fight against transboundary diseases such as ASF, we have to carry on a continuous battle. With the countries having different levels of preparation, this has to be a constant exercise, and we are never fully prepared for the outbreaks that may appear over time. Diseases change over time as well, they evolve, and we have to evolve alongside them. I would like to point out the unprecedented work carried out by this interagency group with the coordination of ICA and under the umbrella of GFTATS, and the extraordinary work they have carried out. Almost 2 years in October since we started working together with this commitment to preparing the countries to prevent and respond to ASF, and taking these concepts also and carrying them to other transboundary diseases. The commitment has to include technical cooperation agencies, but also all institutions as a whole, both official and private, throughout the hemisphere. These agencies have participated in the process, and they have made these webinars so essential that there is a before and after in terms of preparation, thanks to these webinars. Thanks to this training, we have achieved major changes in the emergency response systems at a national level, which is the focus of these webinars. So the notifications are some of the most important bases to ensure the success of early responses to an emergency. This is essential, and we have the principles of transparency where the countries must have an efficient information flow between the official sector and the farmers and producers, and also from the country with respect to the WAH to avoid the spread of this disease and try to fight it with international efforts at the origin and rapidly so that it can be contained. Once again, let me wish you the best of successes in today's webinar focusing on notification. And I hope that you can follow all of the recommendations that we will share with you today. Thank you very much and have a very good webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Urdas. Now, let me hear some opening remarks from Dr. Katia Martinez Rivas. She is a sub-regional representative of WAH for Central America and the Caribbean. Go ahead. Good morning, everyone. As Erica mentioned at the beginning, I am a veterinary doctor, and I am currently the sub-regional representative of the WAH for Central America and the Caribbean. For me, it is a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on notification on behalf of the WOAH and the organizations, of course, that we worked with. We have worked together to bring you these activities and share them with you every month. The initiative of having these webinars have taken place within the global framework to control transboundary diseases in animals, and this began with the appearance in 2021 of African swine fever in the Americas. Ever since the beginning, the organizations involved have developed agendas in keeping with the needs of the countries of the region. It is very important to point out that it is crucial to strengthen capacities in the environment of animal health, especially when diseases such as African swine fever and avian influenza, among others, have posed significant challenges to industries in the different countries. These webinars provide an excellent opportunity to share updated knowledge and facilitate exchange of experiences among professionals and experts of the public and private sectors in the countries of the Americas. The collaboration in the speedy notification of animal diseases are essential to protect public health and animal health as well. The notification and reporting of diseases that are detected and conveying this information to other countries allows for preventive measures and the adoption of strategies to control the spread of diseases in animals, including those that can be transmitted and represent a risk for human health. The timely dissemination of information is essential for the cooperation and collaboration of countries, especially when dealing with transboundary diseases. These joint efforts have facilitated a speedy response to strengthen the well-being of animals and therefore contribute to protecting human health. I would like to thank you all for your participation and commitment to the work that we are doing to protect animal health. And I am confident that this exchange of knowledge between professionals will prove essential in continuing to advance the objectives of the WOAH, as well as each of the participating organizations to improve the well-being and health of animals throughout the world. I wish you a fruitful event and welcome.
Muchísimas gracias, doctora
Thank you
Martínez.
very much,
Con
Dr.
eso, bueno, damos
Martinez.
como inaugurado
Let
este
us
webinar.
officially declare this
Rápidamente le
webinar
voy a
open.
dar
And I
algunas
will
indicaciones, algunas
now share
instrucciones
some
que
instructions
ya
and
doctor Camposano
indications that
puso
Dr.
en el chat.
Camposano has already included
Las
in the chat,
preguntas, por
but
favor, van a ser
just
al
to
final,
mention that the
después
questions will take
de las
place at the
disertaciones que vamos
end
a tener, que
after
van a
the
ser tres. Así
presentations,
que
which will be
vayan
3.
escribiéndolas a
So
través del chat.
please
Se
write
los
those
pueden
questions in the chat,
a nivel de las redes
and
sociales, que los vayan
also on social media. They
formulando
will be
en el
picked up
chat para que
there,
podamos
and
todos.
they can be
Otra
then
cosa es que
pasted on the
pues
chat.
los invito a que
Another
nos vayan
important thing is
colocando
that
de dónde, de qué país nos
it is
acompañan
important
y de qué
to
institución. Para
state
nosotros es
what
muy
country you're
importante tener
joining us from
registro
and what
de
institution you
todas
represent.
las
Because for us, it is
instituciones que
very
están
important to keep
participando en
a
estos
record
webinars,
of
de
all the
todas las
participating
instituciones de los
institutions
países que se
for
están
these
formando a
webinars and
través
all
del
the
webinar.
countries that are
Así que
preparing
los
and
invito
are
a que
using
nos
the information provided
anoten
in
por
these
ahí en el
webinars
chat
to do
también
so.
desde
So
dónde
let
nos
me invite
acompañan.
you to do
Y
so and
bueno,
write in the chat what country
hoy
you are joining
tenemos
us from and what
tres
institution you
presentaciones
represent.
muy
We have
interesantes,
3
con tres
very
expertos
interesting
de
presentation
alto
with
nivel.
3
Vamos a
experts.
tener al doctor
We
Aurelio
will have
Cabezas Murillo, él es
Aurelio
el
Cabezas
sponsor.
Murillo
Él
from
nos va a hablar sobre
WOAH,
los
who
fundamentos de la
will
notificación
be
internacional,
discussing the
algunas
elements of
actividades
international
sobre WAHIS.
notification
También
and
vamos a
the
tener
use
a la
of
doctora
WAHIS, the
Susana
platform.
Susana Ureña
And we will
de Senasa
also
Costa
hear from
Rica.
Susana
Ella nos
Ureña from
habla
Senasa
de
in
los
Costa Rica, who
mecanismos de
will be
notificación nacional
discussing
a nivel de
the
servicios veterinarios
national
oficiales.
notification mechanism through official
También
veterinary
vamos a tener
services.
a la
We
doctora
will also hear from Corina
Marcelita
Zambrano
Becerra,
for the second time.
pues
Uh,
hemos
she
estado
is a friend of
llamando
the
y
house, and
llamado
we
ella.
have
Ella viene desde
talked and
Colombia y
spoken
ella
to
nos va a
her
hablar,
several times.
va a hablar
She is
sobre la
here from
importancia del
Colombia, and
privado
she will be
cooperativas
discussing
en
the
la
importance of
notificación
the
del
private
servicio
sector
veterinario. Entonces,
in the notification
estas,
before the
estos tres
veterinary
expertos,
service. So,
vamos a
with these
iniciar
3
en la primera
experts, we
parte
will
con
officially kick
el
off
doctor
this
Aurelio Cabezas.
first part. Dr.
Y vamos
Aurelio
a darle
Cabezas
una
will
breve,
begin.
unos breves
And
antecedentes
let
del
me
doctor Aurelio.
just
El doctor
share
Aurelio
some
Cabezas se trabaja
information from
desde julio del
Dr. Aurelio Cabezas.
2019.
He joined the
Desde
WOAH
junio
in
del
July
2023
2019, and
forma
since June
parte del
2023,
Departamento de
he has been
Información y
part of
Análisis
the
de la Sanidad
Analysis and
Veterinaria
Information
de la OMSA,
Department of
donde se
the
desempeña como
WOAH, where
analista
he
senior
works as a
de
senior
información
analyst
saneamiento.
of information on animal
Aurelio
health.
forma parte
Aurelio
del
is part of
monitoreo
the
del
team
equipo de
of
gestión de
monitoring,
riesgos
the
y
data
el equipo de
management team,
epidemiología
as
del
well
mismo
as the
departamento,
epidemiology
y
team within
colabora
this
en
department,
menor
and
medida con los
collaborates to a
responsables
lesser extent
técnicos.
with the early
Sus
warning
principales funciones son la
team.
verificación de los
His main
informes
roles are the
semestrales
verification
y
of
notificaciones inmediatas de eventos
reports
zoosanitarios
and
emitidos
immediate
por los miembros
notification of
antes de su
zoosanitary
validación.
events
Aurelio
submitted
también
by the members
contribuye
before their
a muchas
validation.
actividades
Aurelio also
realizadas con
contributes
el
to
desarrollo de
activities
los
carried out with the development and
llamados
optimization
WAHIS
of
en
the
la OMSA.
WAHIS platform
Finalmente,
of the
Aurelio colabora con
WOAH.
el
Finally,
desarrollo
Aurelio
de
collaborates
diferentes actividades de
as much as
formación a los
possible in
miembros
the
de la
different
OMSA en los
activities to
procedimientos de
train the
notificación.
WOAH members
Antes de incorporarse
in
a la OMA,
notification procedures. Before
Aurelio
joining the
trabajó
WOAH,
en
Aurelio
proyectos
worked in
centrados
the academic sector
principalmente
in
en el
projects
desarrollo de
mainly
modelos de
focusing on the
simulación
development of
para
simulation
modelar la
models
propagación de
to
enfermedades en
model the
poblaciones ganaderas
spread of
con el
diseases
fin de
in livestock
facilitar la
populations
elaboración de
in
políticas
order
de
to
control y manejo.
facilitate the drafting of
Aurelio
control
obtuvo
and
su
management
título nobiliario
policies.
en la Universidad de
Aurelio
las
obtained
Américas en
his
Ecuador
degree in the
en
University of the
2012,
Americas in
en el,
Ecuador in
en el
2012,
2012, sí, y
and
continuó sus
continued
estudios
his
en el
his
Royal
postgraduate
Veterinary College
studies at the
y la
Royal
Universidad
Veterinary
Estatal de
College
Kansas,
and
donde
the
obtuvo su
Kansas
maestría y
State
doctorado
University, where
en
he obtained his
epidemiología.
master's and PhD
Con esta,
in veterinarian
estos antecedentes de parte del
epidemiology.
doctor Aurelio,
So, with this
doctor, le
background
damos la
information,
palabra
Dr.
y
Aurelio,
vamos
you
a
have the floor,
presentar.
and very soon
Bueno,
we will be hearing from you. You will be showing your own slides. Go ahead. Thank you, Erica. Can you hear me okay? Let me share your screen. I'm sure that you can see my screen. Yes, just put it in full screen mode. Perfect. Thank you very much, Erica. Thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you to the organizers for this invitation. It is an honor to be here today. I will not repeat what Erica just mentioned. You already know what the topic of this presentation is, so we will move right along. I have divided this presentation into 5 parts. First, we will share some brief information on the WOAH. Then we will discuss the basis for notification, associating the standards of the WOAH and the diseases of mandatory reporting. Then how to notify using the WAHIS platform. We will also do a brief demo of how the system works. And finally, we will discuss the extraction of ongoing data, which is a periodical data, which will be highly relevant for many of the participants today. Just some brief information on the WOAH. You're probably familiarized with the organization, but just to give you some brief information, the organization was created in 1924 by 183 member countries. It was founded as the OIE, and the name of the organizations stayed until 2003 when it changed to its name to Organización Mundial de Sanidad Animal in Spanish, as you see on the screen, WOAH in English, World Organization of Animal Health, which best reflects the purpose of the organization. Its headquarters are in Paris, France, and to date, we have 183 members. It is a true pleasure to mention today that the last country to join is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which we can see on the left of the screen. The country was presented to our members in the last General Assembly. What is the mission of our organization? As Katia mentioned before, it is to improve animal health at a worldwide level, thus ensuring a better health for everyone. As an organization, how do we fulfill this mission? We are based on 6 main pillars, which are in this next slide. And it is based on notification. I always focus, or today I will focus on 3: transparency, scientific information, and sanitary security. How do we guarantee as an organization the transparency of the sanitary situation in the world? Each member of the WOAH commits to declaring the diseases that are detected in their territory. This information does not only concern diseases that transmit to among animals, but those that can be transmitted to humans and which are relevant in this sense. The members submit the information to the organization. We compile, analyze, and disseminate said information. Why do we do this? Well, it is because we have a commitment with our members, and our members need to receive updated information regarding the latest world events, and if needed, taking the necessary measures. The information is disseminated using different outlets, documents, ongoing publications, but also using the WAHIS system, which we will discuss today. We have talked about the WOAH, its mission regarding notification, but now we will discuss the basis for reporting or for notification. And we will tie this to the standards of the WOAH as well as the diseases of mandatory reporting. On the left, you can see these documents. These documents are extremely important: the aquatic health code and the terrestrial health code. Why are these documents important? because, as you probably know, the WTO, in its agreement to apply sanitary and phytosanitary measures, has designed three organizations in charge of drafting the requirements and the standards for the different areas. For animal health, it is the WOAH. The WOAH is in charge of developing these guidelines and requirements, and everything is specified in these codes. To date, today I will refer to the terrestrial animal health code, but everything that I discuss here also applies to the aquatic code. I would also like to mention the fact that these documents are always updated on a regular basis as new evidence appears. So I do recommend that you visit the website of the WAH regularly so that you can access the latest version of the codes and where you will find updated information. Based on the notifications, Chapter 1.1 of each code contains all of the information regarding notification of diseases and presentation of epidemiological data. More specifically speaking, Article 1.1.3 specifies each instance in which the member countries of the WOAH must submit notifications to the organization. I will not describe each one in detail, but we will describe them as we move forward in the presentation. I would like to point out as well that Chapter 15.1 includes all the guidelines which are relevant for infection with the African swine fever virus. So you might wonder, okay, we've described the requirements for notification for the member countries, but which diseases need to be reported? So Chapter 1.3 of the code contains the full list of diseases, infections, and infestations of the WOAH. To date, there are 121 diseases in this list, 90 of which belong to terrestrial species and 31 affect aquatic species. There are also 3 emerging diseases. Another question that you may be asking yourselves is which are the criteria, the inclusion criteria for a disease to become part of this list? These criteria are specified in Chapter 1.2 of the Terrestrial Code, and in the middle part, we have the inclusion criteria. This is for the dissemination of a pathogen and if a country has shown the absence of said disease. The second criteria is the natural transmission of the disease to humans with severe consequences, or the fact that the disease may have a significant impact in domestic and wild animal health. Finally, number 3, that there is a method for detection and reliable diagnosis for a precise definition of the cases. So who does this, the verification of these criteria? It's a special commission for animal diseases, a group of renowned experts who get together and conduct assessments using standard procedures, and they make a decision and issue a recommendation to the organization for a disease to become part of the list, or on the contrary, for a disease to be eliminated from the list. Very well. So we've spoken about WOAH and how to notify, and we've discussed also the legal basis for notification. Now, let us talk about how the notification takes place. And in order to do this, you must know that this is done through the WAHIS platform. This is a worldwide system of zoosanitary information. There are 2 main pathways according to the aquatic and the terrestrial codes. The first one is a follow-up system, which is the 6-month. I apologize, doctor. We are hearing the Portuguese translation in the Spanish channel. I apologize. Okay, go ahead. As I was saying, we have the follow-up system, which is the 6-month management of the information on each one of the diseases in the list of the WOAH by submitting reports. It includes the aggregated information of these diseases. The member countries in general submit information for those diseases that have a stable status or which are endemic in these reports. We also have the early warning system, which are those alerts on diseases that appear on the list, as well as emerging diseases, by submitting immediate notifications and weekly reports for follow-up. With this module, the countries send detailed information regarding diseases that have not been present in the territory for several years, and diseases that were confined to one certain area and that suddenly appear in a different area of the country. So everything that has to do with the occurrence of a disease that is not endemic, that do not have a stable status, and do not occur regularly in the country are notified with the early warning system by submitting immediate notifications and weekly reports. These weekly reports are very important before they are a requirement in the terrestrial and the aquatic code. When a country submits an immediate notification, the country must send weekly follow-up reports regardless of whether there are changes or not in the epidemiological situation. Let's now discuss how the process works. In the next slide, let me start from the bottom up. We have the field agents at the bottom. The field agents are veterinarians and farmers and also epidemiological experts who work and who are in charge in the different countries of detecting. They are more likely to detect something unusual in animal populations. So through good communications with official national services, there is a communication that takes place with veterinary services, and they conduct an investigation. When the laboratory confirms after the data has been collected, this is notified to the WOAH using the WAHIS system. Official veterinary systems have access to this system. So they access the system, they send a notification, we receive this notification, and we have another step to verify the information. And we make sure, first of all, that the information submitted by the member is in keeping with our procedures. And if there is something that is not fully clear, we just get in touch with them, with the focal points in each country, to disseminate and maybe clarify if we have doubts. This can have several rounds of back and forth, but when everything is clear, we proceed to the validation of this report, of this notification, and then we proceed to publishing it in our WAHIS system. It is worth mentioning that the information you will find when you enter the system is validated information always. This is then available for the general public, for the different countries, and for animal health personnel. During the second part of the presentation, I will discuss how we use this WAHIS platform. I will not do a demo in real time because the performance of the system is quite unstable now, and it is difficult to do it in a virtual meeting. But we work very hard to optimize the performance of the system, and we do hope that in the next months it will be working at 100% of its capacity. But what I will do is just share some screenshots of the most relevant parts of the system so that you can have a general glimpse of where you can access the information that you may need. What will be the starting point? What is the first step then? How to access the public interface of WAHIS? You click on this link, and then you will land on the following screen. Here, you will focus on three parts. Here in this upper right part, we have these icons, which are very important. The icon with a little person is if you have credentials to access WAHIS, In general, this is WOAH personnel who have this, and the focal points are the delegates of the countries. We have the language, the 3 official languages, and most importantly, we will be focusing on today on these 2 tabs: analysis and reports. It is also very important to mention that there is a list, a broadcasting list. So you can sign up to this broadcast list and receive in your inbox the latest notifications that have been validated and published in WAHID. So you will receive an email saying the country, the disease, and you can access the report directly. In the lower part of the screen, you will see the latest zoosanitary events. Worthwhile mentioning that these events refer to early warning systems, immediate notification, and follow-up. These are ordered based on the date in which they arrived. And you may probably see what you're trying to identify in the system, but it is important to refine our search. So we may wonder, what type of information are we looking for? For that, you have 2 options: reports, which are all of the reports of immediate notification, or the semi-annual reports, which are submitted by the countries. If you need information to conduct an analysis, you will click here, and in this case, we will be discussing these reports. If we click on where it reads reports, we have 2 options: sanitary events, which are immediate notification, and semi-annual reports. If our report focuses on zoosanitary events for follow-up, we click there and we will land in the next page. This is the main website information, and we have to think about what an event is. An event is a series of outbreaks that are associated epidemiologically, and it is the job of the country to decide whether the outbreaks that were detected in the country are linked together or not. An example, imagine that there is a foot and mouth disease outbreak, and which are, or 2 outbreaks that are close together geographically, and the country realizes that these outbreaks have occurred after a transmission because of direct contact. So they will conduct some kind of investigation and decide that these outbreaks are related. And this is very important. The information that we see here on the screen is at the level of the event. And what is important in this sense? Let me show you.
Informes. En la parte de abajo, si le damos clic acá, podemos aumentar el número de líneas que vamos a ver. En la parte lateral derecha tenemos los iconos para acceder a cada informe. En la parte media de la pantalla tenemos el nombre de las columnas, lo que se refiere al país, al número del informe importante, y N significa notificaciones inmediatas.
Perdón, doctor, hoy
Sí.
lo vuelvo a interrumpir.
No se preocupe.
Se nos metió el sonido ahora de inglés. Por favor,
Ok.
corregirlo. Ahora sí, adelante.
Perfecto, muchas gracias.
Okay, so I was telling you that with regard to the report, there's immediate notification. And then we have the disease, the genotype, if it applies. And then remember that I had told you that with early warning, this has to do with diseases that are not endemic or native to the country. This is the recurrence of a strain that was identified, a recurrence of a disease that first had an onset in an area, a compartmentalized disease. So it doesn't have a stable status, and it doesn't occur periodically in the country. We have the beginning date, which is the identification of the first outbreak and when the report was identified. And then we have the filters. If you want to redefine your search, then you go to the button dealing with searches, and then you see that the left screen is activated. Now we have identified avian flu with a high pathogeneity for farm animals. And then we see, or for poultry, and then we see that you have found African swine fever. I looked at high pathogeneity avian flu because there have been many notices in the past. And this means that we require more information for the demonstration. And then we have the lists of the reports that have been sent and that have to do with events. You may ask yourselves, what do these colored circles refer to? The green means that it's a resolved event. So the country carries out their investigation. Then once it has been resolved, they send the WAH a report stating that it has been resolved, and it is then reported on the system. Yellow refers to events that are currently in the course of being resolved, and blue, well, we don't have that there, depending on the issue. This means that the country has determined that the disease is now stable or endemic with regards to its status. So now the events dealing with this disease is going to be reported in the quarterly reports. So if we click on this report here, we are forwarded to or redirected to the report. As you can see, this is currently being tended to. If we don't have an end date for the report, that means that it is currently ongoing. Now, this is an important field to look at on the screen. In the upper right-hand side, we'll open up the report, and in the upper left-hand side, we see the outbreaks on the map. And this part of the center is extremely important. You can see the ongoing outbreaks and the updated new outbreaks. So these are many reports that have been submitted, and you can see the date. They have been regularly submitted as the code requires. This is an excellent example. And with this event, for example, there's only one outbreak. There are outbreaks that are ongoing because the country still considers that this element has not been resolved. We see the total number of outbreaks, and to the left, you can see if there's a new or updated outbreak. Let's look at report 5. This is a current or updated report. And if we compare this with the total number of outbreaks, we can see that the country's investigation determined that there was new information. So in their weekly report that they sent to the WOAH, they updated it as such. So this is based on immediate notifications or notices. If we look at the quarterly reports, let's look at the second option that we have. And we're going to be redirected to the quarterly reports or semester reports. I selected Bolivia here. We look at the type of report. Then for aquatic land animals, we see the periods, we see quarters, and then 2 years. And then we look at the end of the report. This is the validated end date. So what's important are the filters here, as I mentioned at the beginning, and this will allow you to redefine your search. So we look at the icons on the right, and they will allow you to click on a specific report. In the upper right-hand side, we can see the download icon. So if you want to download a report, you just click on one of these boxes, and then you download the report. They'll be downloaded directly to a specific folder. If you know the ID number of the report, you can enter the upper side and the report that you're searching will immediately appear. So this is the specific report screen. We're trying to find the Bolivia report. I'm not going to enter into detail because many countries take time in entering these reports, and it's a very we could say long process. So you can maybe explore this on your own, given the time restraint that we have right now with the meeting. So you can click on the left-hand side and you can download it to your computer. So we have spoken about redefining our search. And the first search we did was for reports. So if the objective at your report changes, of your search changes, well, you can click on the analysis tab and there's another window. And we have 3 different options. These are the dashboards or panels. First is the status of the disease status, and we activate this panel. Here, I select the region, the Americas, for example, and I've selected a disease, which is avian flu, because there's a greater occurrence of this disease. And I want more information available for the demonstration right now. So we have our countries, Canada, Chile, Colombia. And then we go from 2005 through 2019. The WISE system includes information submitted by the members since 2005 up until today. Prior to 2005, there was another platform called Hang Status. I'm not going to refer to that right now. We're just going to deal with WISE right now. From 2005 to this date. So we see different colors that state or refer to the status of the disease. And we can go to the right and we look at the legends, which convey the information or the status of the disease for each semester. So it is important to mention that we have the export of importing the data export tab. So we go to that tab first. And you can also access maps. But be very careful because maps will be displayed based on the time period that you stated or selected. So here we see the status from 2005 through 2019. And during that period, the disease has been ongoing. So just be wary with regard to how you interpret the maps. As I mentioned before, if you click on the export data tab or box, the blue box, it's the same information as we see in the panel, but it's in a table format. If we export it, we receive the information in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can work with that or change the format depending on what your objective is. Now, for quantitative data, this refers to the fact that, well, this is a report showing the example of outbreaks of avian flu in the Americas from 2019 through 2023. There are different types of graphs that you can explore in this system. And you can also go back to the export data option, and the same information that you see in this table or in this graph will be in a table format that you can export to your computer. So this is repetitive, so bear with me. It's just searching for information on surveillance. And if you click on surveillance and control measures, you go to the search and you can click on, for example, the region of the world. Let's click on America's second semester, Brazil, for example, avian flu in domestic birds and or domestic poultry, and we're going to export the information so you can work with the data. Now the same comment goes as before. These maps, these colored maps state that more or fewer measures have been applied, but be wary with regard to the dates and interpreting information. We've spoken about access to the systems in very general terms. But now perhaps you can let me know, or you can always let me know if you're lost, if you don't understand the system. So if you need help, you go with your mouse to the bottom, very bottom of the screen, and to the left, you see the contact link and the frequently asked questions. If you're a WAHI's neophyte, I do recommend that you go to the frequently asked questions to resolve your doubts. Your doubts may be answered. But if you're more advanced users of WAHIS and you do need to contact us directly, please feel free to do so. Our assistance service will provide all the help that you need. Now, this page is only in English as of now. We are translating that into Spanish. But these are important tabs. The first one is, well, once you go into WISE, you will, and you want to report a malfunction, you can contact the help desk, for example. Or if you need map data, you can use the second tab. So one is for emergencies and one has to do with requests. So we will definitely quickly tend to your query. So I'm going to now speak about periodic data extraction or data mining. So this is an Excel file, and it has important information about data notified by the members through immediate weekly follow-up reports, as I mentioned beforehand. Now, we mine this information or extract this data on a weekly basis that we share via a SharePoint file. Now, the general public does not have access to this SharePoint file, but if you need access to it, you can request access by requesting or sending a ticket. So we hold a virtual meeting with you once we receive the request to just train you as to how to use the Excel files and help you understand and interpret the data correctly. So access to SharePoint, again, is done after you request access to that file. So you have to take the initiative to do that. So this is what I prepared for today. Perhaps it's plenty of or too much information, but this information will be shared with you, this presentation, as well as the recording. But if you do have questions, feel free to contact us at our department. You can email us. We're always happy to be of service in any with any of your questions. Thank you, Erica, and back to you. Thank you so much, Dr. Cabezas. Excellent summary of the presentation. I thought it would be longer, but you were very succinct, and I do thank you for your effort. Because many times we feel that we understand WAHIS well and we know how to send the information. So freshening or a refresher course is always helpful, especially for individuals that haven't used it in a longer period of time or for neophytes. But thanks again for your excellent summary. We will now continue with the following presentation. Now, before that, I wanted to just mention the fact that many of the participants that are here today, well, just to mention our ORIRSA colleagues from Guatemala and Honduras, and a warm greeting to all of you at ORIRSA. And Dr. Freddy Gonzalez from USAC in Guatemala. He was my professor, so I'd like to send a special greeting to him. And Nariño is here from Colombia, the USDA, and Senasa, Peru. Oxapampa, Peru, Hugo Soto from ICA, Colombia. We have many participants from the Colombian Agricultural Institute, as well as representation from the plurinational state of Bolivia, Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Sanasac as well, Godo Godoy Galanza, and Luisandro Villalba, who is the internal surveillance expert from La Esperanza. We also have Newton Galbao from Brazil and from Guatemala. Epidemiologists and Rafael Ortega from ICA Colombia. So we have many official institutes representing us or accompanying us today, and we do thank private or attendees from the private sector and academia as well. Thank you. So, without further ado, we'll continue with our next presentation made by Dr. Susana Ureña. Now, just before we hear from her, we just want to mention that she's a graduate from the National University of Costa Rica Veterinary Medicine Department. She graduated in 2009. She has been working for more than 10 years at SENASA, which is the Costa Rican National Animal Health Service, and is an expert in standards and regulations with regards to animal and public health. She's an expert in processing plant inspections and epidemiological surveillance. So from 2014 to now, she's been coordinator of the Costa Rican Swine Health Program, and she was an expert in coordination of swine from 2013 and 2015 at DIPOA in Costa Rica, and an expert in swine slaughtering and deboning. So, doctor, you have the floor. Let us know when to go to the next slide. Thank you so much. Hello to everyone. Now, with regard to national notification systems on an official scale, we're going to look at Costa Rica's notification or reporting systems. Costa Rica's SENASA Law 8495 is the animal health veterinary law, and it comes under the purview of the Ministry of Agriculture, that is SENASA, which is in charge of regulating and planning, as well as coordinating and implementing enforcement of the animal population health, as well as zoonoses control and veterinary control to be able to uphold veterinary public health. Now, Law 8495 of SENASA has Article 44, which establishes that the health of the animal health population needs to be, or that all the conservation of the health of the animal population should always be upheld, and that every person is mandated to report any suspicious plague or disease, to report this to the competent authorities, if not, face administrative sanctions. We also have decree, which is 34669. Now, this decree has the purpose of reporting. It's mandatory reporting, and it states that reporting has to be done in a specific manner. For example, it includes swine fever, African swine fever, avian flu. So the actual disease is reported, but if there's an increase in human morbidity or morbidity of unknown causes, then reporting has to be done as well. So veterinary surgeon or veterinary medicine experts are notified, as well as national laboratories. And so if morbidity or morbidity is not needs to be notified in a period not exceeding 24 hours. That's what this decree establishes, this specific article of this decree. So why is it important to report or notify diseases? Well, early reporting is required, because if there's a suspicious case, there needs to be timely reporting to be able to prevent this disease from spreading to farms or through the country. We saw in the Dominican Republic that there's a precedent that there was underreporting, and the weakness was access to lab tests. So our system wants early detection, or early reporting rather, to be able to establish quarantine measures and to conduct lab tests and be able to disseminate this information in a timely manner. So we can now, if that happens, work on better controlling and containing the disease. So we do emphasize early reporting of any suspicious case, and to conduct passive surveillance. So many times there are combined passive and active surveillance measures, as well as sentinel surveillance. So what's the problem? That many times active surveillance, since it requires continuous surveillance, is an expensive method, and many times we're not able to establish actual presence of the disease at the moment where it's happening. So what we seek is to obtain more passive surveillance, that if a disease happens at some facility, the staff or the workers or the vet to notify this in a timely manner, and then we will intervene. So what's the problem with passive surveillance? Underreporting. So many times we tend to be too trustworthy, and we don't think a disease will ever impact us, but maybe classic or African swine fever will impact us. Nobody is free of this. So many times, for example, now we're dealing with different types of viruses. For example, now we're dealing with cattle screwworm, for example. So we are never immune to an outbreak. So the producers need to be very aware of what is normal, what isn't, and if there's something abnormal occurring, if there's a higher morbidity, they have to really take action and report any activity or abnormal activity to be able to rule out an exotic disease. And then we will, in the case of being informed, proceed with quarantine measures, etc. So what's important? If we are able to notify these diseases in a timely manner, we will be able to deal with the productive chain and notify workers and farmers. Well, many times if we deal with backyard animals, we don't have veterinarians dealing with this. So what you would do is go tell your local vet, tell your local producer, and many times if we also go to the commercial expert, notify that staff that there's an abnormality, and anything that you think is outside of the norm. And be wary, it could be caused by an exotic disease. So we need to also train all members of the agro food chain or agro commercial chain as to the onset of this type of disease. Also, we need to be able to carry out surveillance at swine meeting points, auctions, for example. There are no swine auctions in Costa Rica, but there are in other countries, as well as we have to look at slaughter plants as well. So surveillance takes place at the slaughterhouses, active but passive surveillance, post-mortem, and as well. So Costa Rican slaughterhouses they do receive inspection from veterinarians and inspectors from SENASA. So if there are lesions or diseases dealing with an exotic disease, samples are taken and they're sent to SENASA so we can conduct the corresponding follow-up. Here we see channels that we see heavy bleeding, and this was the abnormality, and this was on the swine's skin, and this can also occur with bovines. But what's established is that at slaughterhouses, then this group, this channel, is condemned, and then the samples are taken. And remember, these samples have to be taken, but also the regional facility has to receive a notification so that the production areas can be notified and samples can be taken, as well as quarantine measures. So it's important to link passive surveillance at the farm or at the production site with the slaughterhouses. Next. So the decree of mandatory notification also mentions the information that has to be gathered when a report is prepared. So first, it entails general data, the date of the report, the details of the individual who's responsible for drafting the report, the person, the address, the phone number, a fax if there's a fax, and an email address. Then the actual spatial location or physical location of the event, the disease data, the name of the disease, identification of the causal agent, strain, serotype, where the event began, the chronology of the event, the start date, date of the complaint. Then 5 would be the diagnostic data, the lab tests used, the name of the lab that issued the result. And then 6 would be the impacted or affected population, the species, the exposed population, how many animals were sick, how many died, how many animals were slaughtered, how many were destroyed, and what sanitary measures. 7, the health measures in place.
Nosotros como SENASA hemos establecido diferentes medios. En ese caso, nosotros como SENASA nos llegan muchas denuncias, por ejemplo, de bienestar animal, de que el perrito está amarrado.
We receive several reports because of several problems, but for these, we ask for more official measures like going to the office and signing a form so that we don't oversaturate phone lines for reports that may not be of interest at a national level. If there's a report for exotic diseases or diseases of importance, it has been established that reports can be received over the phone. So if you call SENASA and you write a report, we coordinate so that it can enter a surveillance system that we will see in more detail. Electronically in the SENASA website, you can fill out a report also and submit it through the page. You can also do this for avian influenza. We had a suspicion that many of the reports will be private reports. Yes, people who found birds that were dying on the beaches, for example. So we created a WhatsApp for people to have a more easy approach. Actually, when these are diseases that are not by productive species, people are not really aware or familiar with SENASA functions, and they don't know the methods to contact us. At the level of SENASA, maybe I haven't explained the structure of SENASA, but we have the general directorate, and we also have 8 regional directorates that are connected to the central office. So they operate at a national level. With the field personnel, they do the interventions if there is a report. The website of SENASA has contact with the phone repertory, and they can find them with the different methods. You also have this map. Depending on your location, you can find the closest location, and there is a method to contact them, obviously within business hours, and how to locate the official that you need to talk to.
A nivel de las denuncias, bueno, esto es lo que les mencionaba sobre la página web del SENASA, que tenemos un
Here on the
apartado
website of
de
SENASA, we
denuncias.
have a separate
Las personas
section where
pueden
you
enviar
can
las denuncias
send your report.
electrónicas llenando un
And
formulario
they can
y
do
también
this
hacer
electronically by
estados
filling
y
out a
adjuntar lo
report.
que son
And in
fotografías
some
para
cases, you can attach photographs to
experiencia.
sort of give some proof of your report.
Como ya lo mencioné, en algunos casos se ha habilitado hasta números de teléfono de WhatsApp, o en el caso de ahora del gusano barreno,
We
también tenemos
have
el código
WhatsApp
QR
as
para
well.
que ellos puedan
For
descargarlo y puedan acceder
screwworm
también
fly, we
al número
also
de
have
emergencia para poder
a special number
hacer
so that
notificaciones.
you can notify
Aquí todas estas
accordingly.
herramientas lo que buscan es que las personas busquen y traten sí de contactarnos
Here,
y que
people
traten de
can
notificarnos las
look us
sospechas que
up
tienen,
and try to
porque lo que
notify
buscamos es
these
que sea una manera
suspicions,
fácil de
because what we are
reportarlos.
looking
Si
for
lo
is to
hacemos
try
muy
to
rápido,
find an
entonces
easy
vamos a
way to
tener
create these
fácil la
reports.
persona
If
que
we
no va a
put a
querer
lot of
hacer la denuncia
obstacles,
y
the
entonces
people
no nos
will
va
not want to,
en
they
los
won't
minutos o
want
segundos
to
o horas
present the
requeridas.
report. So those
En cambio,
seconds and
en el
days
caso
and
de las
hours are
denuncias por
essential when it is an
notificación,
exotic disease.
a nivel del sistema de vigilancia, entonces cuando nosotros realizamos las denuncias, el sistema de
When
vigilancia
we do
epidemiológica,
the
el CIVE,
reports, the
el
surveillance
sistema de
system, the
vigilancia epidemiológica del
CIVE,
SENASA,
which is
todos sus
the
elementos
active
previos
epidemiological
para nosotros
surveillance
poder
system of
digitalizar
SENASA, has
toda
created a
aquella información
system
de
to
vigilancia
digitalize
epidemiológica.
all of the
Antes lo
information regarding
teníamos a mano, en
epidemiological
documentos, en
surveillance.
papelitos,
Before, we
y
had
eso se perdía.
documents, we have
Muchas veces
papers, and those
teníamos que
papers
preguntar
got
a alguien, había que
lost. And
pedirle el
sometimes
certificado
to
que
write a
el
report, you had
resultado
to
del
ask
papel
someone for
también.
that piece of
Entonces, todo
paper
eso
and
se
have the
pudo
result in a
digitalizar
piece of
para
paper.
que nosotros
So
podamos
now
tener
that
la
it has been
información de cada
digitalized, we
evento
can
que
have the
ocurriera en
information
el
for
sistema
all
CIVE
the
y en cualquier
events that take
momento podemos
place,
acceder y
and
podemos
at any
verificar
time we can
la
access the
denuncia
information.
siguiente. El CIVE es un sistema en línea, entonces como ya lo mencioné, el link está a
The
nivel de la página
CIVE
del
is
SENASA
an
y
online
nosotros
system. It's
podemos
on the
acceder al
website of
sistema
SENASA, and
ya
we can
teniendo
access the
nuestros
system
usuarios que son
through
usuarios
a
externos, que
user.
son
There
funcionarios
are
del SENASA,
internal
y en este caso
users
serían usuarios externos
of
que
SENASA, and there are
pueden acceder
external
de
users,
manera
people who
rutinaria
take
a nuestro
samples on
trabajo,
a
en algunos
routine
casos cuando
basis.
necesitan algún diagnóstico de alguna
And
enfermedad
sometimes,
específica para ellos, pero también hay
when they're
profesionales
looking
especializados que
for
pueden
a
trabajar
specific disease, and
con
also
nuestras
specialized
denuncias
personnel.
y puede entonces obtener información o puede
They
acceder
can
a
obtain
diferentes
information
informaciones
or access the
recursos.
different options that are available.
A nivel del CIBE, como ya lo mencioné, entonces cuando nos llaman o cuando nos mandan un correo,
When
nosotros
we
podemos
receive
direccionar
an
una llamada
email,
epidemiológica al CIBE a la parte de notificaciones. Entonces,
you
si
can
un
send it
correo
to the
dice
part
algo
of
de que esa persona está
notifications.
muriendo
So
o
if a
algo así,
producer says, my pigs
nosotros
are
podemos
dying, yes?
apuntar para registrar
So, or they're showing difficulty
todos estos
breathing. This started a few
señales
days ago.
y
All of this
nosotros lo
information
registramos
is put into the
en la parte de
system.
notificaciones
We
y
enter
nosotros
it
le
and it
ponemos
appears in
fecha cuando fue
notifications. So we
la
have
fecha con el día
the date, we have, next slide, please.
se ingresa entonces con los datos del establecimiento, si
So
tiene
you
CIREA,
enter the
si tiene
information
la
of the
CIREA
farm, of
corresponde a
the
la región
establishment, if they
geográfica
have a
donde se encuentra
CIREA
el animal,
code, which
que
is
también es un
the
sistema en línea para
agricultural
nosotros
code
poder vincularlo al
system,
establecimiento
which
y
also has an
poder
online
localizar.
system to
En
establish
el
the
caso de la denuncia,
location, the
podemos
farm,
indicar
etc. So you
la razón
enter
por la
the
denuncia,
information,
el número de teléfono,
you
el
include the
recipient,
phone number, etc.
un poco la descripción de la persona que realiza la notificación, el
So
número de
the person
teléfono,
who does a
el teléfono si
notification
fue
appears
presencial,
here, the
pero si
phone
fue,
number if it
digamos,
was in
por
person or if it
llamada,
was
ahí
done
se
over
puede
the
ingresar.
phone or by
Indica
mail.
también cuál es la especie
You also
afectada.
specify what the
Pueden ser varias
species
en el caso que
affected
sea
are.
una
It can be
puede ser
several if it's a
varias
disease
especies.
that can
Cuál es la
affect several
población
species,
total que está siendo
what the
afectada,
total
el
population
número de
is
animales
being
enfermos
affected,
y el número de animales muertos.
and
Esta información se
the
recopila
number of animals that have died.
cuando
This
nos
information is
pueden
compiled
pedir cualquier
when
número. Esto es
they
para que
call us or
nosotros
they send us an
hagamos
email.
la intervención o
This is
realicen el
in order
seguimiento
to
cuando
make sure that
necesitemos
when we
dirigirnos a
visit the
nuestros
farm or
farms
the
y que
establishment,
nosotros
we
podamos
know what
ir conociendo
resources
el
we need to
diagnóstico que vamos a
bring and
realizar
to
por ellos.
start to
Entonces
sort
podemos
of
ir desde
anticipate what we will need.
estableciendo, bueno, se ocupa para hacer un muestreo de cuántos animales, de
And
cuántos peces,
you
monitones,
create
toda esa
a group
información
of
inmediatamente
samples,
recopila para
etc.
poder
So all of that
proceder
information is
con
compiled
todos los
to
trámites
pay them a visit
correspondientes
and
a poblaciones
bring everything that is
a las que llegamos.
required.
Entonces, en caso de mortalidad se pone,
So in
aquí se
case
pone
of
denuncia
mortality,
afectado
you can
el
specify whether this is a
establecimiento
mortality that has
o si
affected
es
the
un
pigs,
establecimiento grande,
if it's a
todas esas
backyard
informaciones se
establishment,
recopilan
if it's a
para que
large
la persona que
establishment,
hace la
etc.,
visita, entonces
so that
tenga
the person who
en el
will
caso
do the
de
visit can have all the
tener el
information
número de esa
beforehand.
persona que
We
recibe la
include the
denuncia
information, we include the name, and this is in the same system as the regional system that needs to receive that report. That is the regional office or the office in that canton that needs to organize the visit. So at the level of the report, after you do the visit, the system allows you to create an event. That event in general is associated to the moment when you do the first visit. At the level of the event, you can establish the registration, the CIREA code, the date in which the episode began, when the report took place, a group of diseases that are suspicious. The ASF and CSF, we have them cataloged as red diseases for swine. So then you enter one by one the diseases that we consider of interest and that could be the cause of these symptoms that are declared. So you include those here and you add them. Next slide, please. At the level of the system, we have established this to have a geo-reference and to know the different establishments. So what we're looking for is to have a report in which first that we have the CIREA, and once this is entered into the CIREA, we put this into the CIVE, this information. This is so that when we draft the report, we can have a geo-referencing of other establishments that are close by or have a documentation of the existing ones in this locality, which has an X or a Y number of animals. So this is to associate them to all systems, surveillance and registration of the establishments. That's where we place the information, what population they have. Next slide, please. Number of animals, type of animals, the species, the system, whether it's confinement, if it's backyard, or basically the characteristics, the waste treatment system, and other information.
En ese caso, también cuando se hace la creación del evento, uno puede estar ingresando visitas. Puede ser que en un establecimiento se registre una única visita o puede ser que en los establecimientos se registren múltiples visitas.
Maybe it will be one or several, depending on the manifestation of the disease and what results were obtained in that farm. This was visit number one. We clarified that we are addressing a report. We had a bovine with nervous symptoms, nervous system symptoms. That's why they conducted the visit. Same thing is if it's a red disease or screwworm or other diseases where SENASA does surveillance activities. In this case, we place the information here of the population affected, what type of animal, what species was affected, what was found if the necropsy was performed, and at a general level, in the next one, if a treatment was applied, if vaccination was applied, if needed. So in some cases, when it's rabies, we take samples in animals, but also this is associated with vaccination against rabies in those animals that are still alive or in that farm or on other nearby farms. If there is, for example, an order to not move the pigs or not move out certain products in that on that farm, there would be this order established in the SIVE, SIVE. So the idea is to group together all of the information in the notification systems, all of the information that the law or the decree established as required. We try to link it together so that when we need a report, we just need to check the CIVE and obtain the information. Next slide. So for quarantine measures, the system allows us to enter this. For example, who notified these measures? We put their ID number. And in the case, for example, when it is an exotic disease, a measure, if there is confirmation, could be to slaughter the animals and destroy their carcasses. When you do the visit and you create it in the system, you can also create protocols. Protocols are the form to enter the samples at the level of the system. So Next slide, please. The protocol, you don't need to enter all of the information of the farm because you will have it automatically pre-populated. But I can create the protocol, but I have to enter, in some cases, the information of the protocol. Here, you enter the email, the phone number, all of that information will be entered in order to present samples to the lab. In this case, the location of the animals, information on where it is located, the canton, the district. The data to enter the samples. We have an official laboratory of SENASA. In some cases, some tests are made in regional labs. We have them in La Brunca and other areas of the country. But when they are reports concerning exotic diseases, oftentimes we do PCR. So PCRs are only located in the central lab where all the samples are sent directly. In order to submit samples to the lab, we have to create these labs, and we enter the number of animals that are being sampled, the number of animals who are sick, number of animals that died, if any, how many animals were sampled, what is the purpose of the sampling. In the case of passive surveillance, when it's just addressing a report, we include the case notification. And it's important to explain that this is a case notification, because when samples arrive at the lab, if there is a case notification, the people at the lab know that they need to do a diagnosis as soon as possible, because it may be an exotic disease and therefore the establishment will be in quarantine. And if positive, they can proceed to the slaughter and elimination of the animals. But if the test is negative, we can lift the quarantine and not affect the product and production. So it is very important to make these notification. Some people talk about active surveillance, and it's not active surveillance. So this delays the process in general. We include the affected species here. If it was a farm, sometimes they are taken at the abattoir, so it's different, and information on the disease. Next slide. Information on the diseases that are being diagnosed. You can include here whether it's blood, it's tissue, what type of tissue, and then you add information of each of the samples that will be submitted to the lab. Identification of the animal, the different characteristics, and the information that can facilitate the process to have the full identification of the sample. Next slide. We include here the information at a general level, what indications the animals had, if there was a necropsy performed, and in the lab, if needed, maybe including other differential diagnoses that were not included in the first place, or that maybe they can recommend taking other samples if the sample selected was not adequate. Here, the signature of the veterinary doctor and the person who delivered the sample. And in the country, for classical swine fever and other exotic diseases, we have established this process, and where the invoice appears, there is an exemption code that is included there for SENASA. And what we look for here is to favor the process in general. So if they do the notification, they can do the visit, and the visit itself will not have any cost. So this facilitates the process and encourages them to notify, because they know that they won't be having to spend any money. And if the test is positive, there can be animal loss. But when we talk about slaughter, also there is a risk by SENASA. Susana, just if you can speak a little bit more slowly. They didn't tell me soon enough, but I will try to speak a little bit more slowly. So we place here when they were received, and they receive the samples, and they provide an identification code. When you enter the samples, you get an identification code. And when the samples are delivered to the lab, you don't need to look at the forms. You just need to take the samples and on a piece of paper, the identification code. So it's usually 6 or 8 digits, and that's what we use for the samples in the lab. And with that, by entering the system, you can have all of the information. Before, we used to have protocols or documents, and that made it a bit difficult to benefit the surveillance system. So with the SIVA system, we've made the process much more user-friendly. This is part of the protocol, but once we have the samples at the laboratory level, they process them based on what has been defined for the cases and for surveillance. In the case of classical swine fever and African swine fever, we try to do combined samplings, both the PCR, ELISA tests, etc. But the definitive diagnosis is based on positive PCR tests. So when we are dealing with a suspicion of an exotic disease, if it's a red disease, we usually try to take samples to do PCR. If we conduct a visit and samples are not taken for PCR, we will request a second visit so that we can have the rest, so PCR. Once this is processed, the lab issues a result, also in the system. So they process it and the results are obtained. When I enter the sample or when the lab obtains the result, they can establish who they want to share the result with. Oftentimes, the people from the region, if they do, if they have a suspicion, they share the protocol with the heads of the program, the coordinators in this case. And if it's a red disease, they probably CC me, depending on the importance. Sometimes Alexis Sandy, who is the chief of epidemiology, and in some cases, the regional director, just so that they can be on the lookout in case the result is positive and that we receive that ASAP. So oftentimes it happens that the person who uploaded the protocol can include who they shared it with, but then the other person can modify it and they specify who they want to share it with. Next slide, please. These are the protocols. It's a PDF document with a digital signature, information of the farm, how many samples, how they are identified, their characteristics, and the lab person who signed or validated this result. So in this case, it's an active surveillance sample for ASF in the abattoir. This information is compiled, and if positive, we can do follow-up at the level of the farm, establishing the slaughter, destruction, and try to contain the outbreak like that. The lab can share the result, but oftentimes there are notifications over the phone, by email, even before the positive result, because we probably know from the lab that, we know over the phone that this has been validated in the system and that they can notify it over the phone. So they can intervene the establishment before the results appear in the system, just because it was notified over the phone or by email. If there is a positive result, we need to do the notification of the event before SENASA, So the delegate sends this in less than 24 hours when the event has taken place. So in that case, these are immediate notifications. And if there is an immediate notification, they have to submit it weekly with follow-up reports. If, I mean, these reports can be by occurrence or first appearance, and as long as there is no ASF, but it could be if there is a contribution, we could do the first notification of ASF and later others. And if there's a reoccurrence, if we have another case of CSF, we could report a reappearance. Or if there is a new strain, for example, if there is a Pierce strain from Europe, we have the American strain, so we could create the report, hopefully not, obviously, and then changes in the distribution and the virus load, etc. And this at the level of the country, but mostly regarding notification. But mostly what we need to do is incentivize the issue of notification and eliminate the sub-notification bias or the under-notification bias. See, so this is the most effective approach to do surveillance because it is to rechannel the sampling to the populations that are actually in trouble. And it could be because of the exotic disease of importance or the disease of interest. Thank you very much, Susana. Very interesting. And as you can see, the last slide is really bringing together everything that has to do with the notification cycle, both internal and internationally with the WAHIS. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. And we will now move to the next. In this case, we wanted to bring you the point of view of the private sector for a notification, and that everything is really complementing each other. Like Dr. Aurelio said, notification is the cheapest and most efficient way of doing detection of diseases in an early, with an early approach. So we have participation from Brazil. We have participation from the official veterinary systems in Mato Grosso, in the state of Tocantins, in Minas Gerais, and Goiás. Goiás, sorry. And we are also followed by the State Agency of Animal and Plant Health Defense. Thank you very much. And that's great that the academic sector is joining us today. So you are all invited to continuing the dissemination and development of these webinars on a monthly basis. So please spread the word so that we can become more and more people involved in this. Please do send your questions through the chat and specify which speaker is this question addressed to so that when the Q&A session starts, we can know who to ask. Without further ado, I will introduce Dr. Corina Zambrano. She's the Executive Vice President of Port Colombia. She's an industrial microbiologist of the Javeriana University and has a master's in design and management of processes in La Sabana University. And she's also a doctor in natural sciences of the Technological Institute of Costa Rica. Since 2018, she has served as Executive Vice President of Port Colombia Association after working as a research and transfer director, technology transfer director, and also worked as executive director of Ceniflores, advisor
to the Deputy Director General of and Specialist in the Technology and Innovation of the Inter-American Institute of Cooperation on Agriculture, ICA, and also worked in AgroSavia, used to be Corpo ICA, and also in projects for the World Bank and the IDB, among others. So, without further ado, Dr. Corina Zambrano, you have the floor, and we will share your presentation.
Muy buenos días a todos. Esta va a ser una presentación un poco diferente a la presentación hecha por mis compañeros
Now,
de
this
panel.
presentation is going to be a bit different from my panel, fellow panelists. So we're going to speak about the productive sector in that point of view. Now, the productive sector of Colombia, just to contextualize the participants of this webinar, the producers, these represent the swine producers in Colombia. So these types of associations lead resources using a fund called the Parafiscal Fund. And it's a quota that swine producers pay. It's kind of like a tax, and it's paid on a mandatory basis. And it's required of all official slaughterhouses. Now, this is a strategy that we used to be able to better manage the sector in Colombia. So I'm going to present the strategy that we follow as swine producers. And it's to be able to motivate them to report any occurrence to the official authority in Colombia, which is the National Agricultural Authority. And we work with ICA in this endeavor. And the idea is to always raise awareness among swine producers in Colombia. So what's the objective of the strategy? Basically, we try to respond to one of the main problems that exists in Latin America, which is the problem of producer underreporting. If a company works well, swine production, for example, what health authorities do is first, as a response, they carry out a quarantine. So it's very difficult for producers then to volunteer information if they know that their facility is going to be closed or quarantined. But there is a mandatory reporting for PPA or for AFS rather. But there isn't economic rewards, for example, or retribution to make up for reporting or for dealing with situations once they report a disease. So what we're conducting right now is identifying the disease and how it spreads. So AFS, for some time now, well, we've been declared as an AFS-free country. But within the main production sites, it's very hard for vets working on the farms to be able to see what the actual signs are and the symptoms, because we have been a country free of AFS. So the main what we endeavor to do is to be able to teach vets to identify what these symptoms are and identify any production abnormalities. So they're trained in initial actions in the event that they suspect any sort of clinical signs denoting AFS, etc. So what they do is they report this to the nearest veterinary service or an organization known as Pork Colombia. So this is our mechanism that we use basically as an early warning system, is basically call ICA or any veterinary service or Pork Colombia so we can start working on responding to the to the report. So we tell the pork producers what to do, the swine producers, in the event that they suspect clinical signs, and we find actual positive results. So once this has been confirmed, then we proceed to slaughter the sick animals. So the Colombian Agricultural Institute has a specific fund. It's an emergency fund for offsetting the production costs of declaring or reporting a suspected case of AFS. But it's hard to access these resources because it's a fund that refers to all diseases. It's not only for African classic swine flu or swine fever or AFS. It's for any sort of possible animal health related diseases. So the idea is to provide some sort of assuage for the producers to be able to compensate their difficulties, economic difficulties, and encourage reporting. So we motivate them in upholding safety regulations, safety rules, or carrying out, for example, aspects, key aspects such as washing, disinfecting trucks, conducting biosafety audits. This is done on an internal level, and we train internal auditors within the farms themselves to be able to continuously conduct these types of safety procedures. So in this way, we can classify our farms based on different safety levels. So we call them gold, silver, and bronze. And the idea is to reinforce standards using a checklist and kind of encourage individuals, challenge the swine producers to uphold biosafety aspects in the production site. So again, gold, silver, and bronze are our classification standards. So the idea is to maintain health status for the facility, to maintain the health status that they achieve. Next. Okay, the image is frozen. Okay, but we'll continue. So the strategy, you can move on, Erica, to the next slide. We do this through a communications plan. And this is a very important part of our program because we have approximately 18,000 producers. When you have such a high number, then you have to consider having a minimum contact with each swine producer in the country so they can be learned in the strategies that we have. So our training program for Pork Colombia for swine producers includes small producers to large meat production companies. So we have differentiated training plans for each size and type of swine producer. So as part of the training plan, we include, emergency scenarios, contingency plans, and how to notify the official veterinary service, Pork Colombia or the Ministry of Agriculture. And we coordinate with different cooperating entities from different countries, for example, the United States, Denmark, to be able to develop updated emergency contingency plans. And this goes hand in hand, or we work together with the veterinary service, the National Veterinary Authority Service. And we prepare communications materials to be able to distribute in the event of emergencies, bulletins or press releases, so everyone can keep abreast of any emergency that arises. So if anyone goes on the internet and searches for information, so that this information will be the correct information. And we also are trained, or we work together with international authorities trained in communications, in public health, and we're able to prevent that way our public information officers to convey information that's going to cause public health alarms. So it's important to have our communication experts trained in communicating outbreaks, because we don't want to cause which could happen with classic or African swine fever, prevent any sort of public health concerns. So that's why it's important to have well-trained communication experts. So we also conduct this by training our team, our health authorities, as well as INVIMA, which is another sector of the Ministry of Agriculture, and the National Public Health Service, and the communications sector as well. Next. In order to convey risk, we use assertive language, and we had spoken about this in the past webinar, about how to speak to the target audience. And we have to always remember that target audience that plays an important role. It includes all actors in the sector, ICA and BIMA, professionals, producers, experts on the farm, and trade experts, the actual commercial side, anyone who's impacted throughout the production chain. Next. These are the communications materials that we tend to use, because we've developed materials for smaller farmers or producers to understand what is the actual clinical, what are the clinical symptoms that they have to be aware of. For example, what's important is to take animals out of production, especially producers, because it has to be denoted and made evident by individuals in the production chain, so they won't actually proceed and continue the production of sick animals. So this is unconventional material that we've identified especially in border areas. We think that this is extremely important. How to manage food, for example. There was a donation from Russia of different swines sent to Venezuela, and Venezuela borders Colombia. So we had to mitigate the risk of this meat that was sent, because we had to minimize the risk of residue for pork to not reproduce in backyard farm animals. So we had to think about this beforehand, especially in border areas such as Venezuela that received this donation. Now we're speaking about very small production sites, 3 to 5 pigs. And we had to train them in how to identify authorities. But these swine producers are swine producers that aren't continuous producers. When you have a giant multi-million-dollar business, you're perhaps more aware that you have to conduct health inspections, that you have to maintain certain standards, and you make biosafety efforts to contain disease. But these smaller producers that tend to, work more irresponsibly. They'll be a farmer one day and a producer another day. What they want is additional income for their families, but their practices tend to be, informal and rather lack in biosafety standards. So we have to be very aware of these smaller farmers, because there are many. and make sure that they don't think that what is an important symptom is not just a minor complication. So this is an unconventional material for these types of producers. Then we also have technical material for shippers, for example, transporters. Identify the slaughter house and each of the production chains or the links to the chain that have to be identified to conduct a proper type of notification or reporting. We also have to think about passengers. For example, in the Dominican Republic, where we wanted to mitigate the biosafety risk at the airports, for example. Then we also have information sheets for producers. These are specific pictures of sick animals, so they can see the disease in action, for example, and be able to compare it with their 3 to 5 pigs and be able to identify diseased animals. So I know they're difficult pictures, very graphic, difficult pictures to look at, but it's the only way that we can train producers in being able to identify the disease and report it to the corresponding authorities. So everything with regards to AFS is expressed in very simple language in great detail so that anyone can understand the importance of raising their hands in time and protect meat producers and the public at large. We also have we can call these primers or just flashcards, for example, and one is called the virtual classroom. And what we do is register individuals or send the link for individuals to register if they're producers, that is, and from the swine sector to be able to train free of charge. Next. This is the virtual classroom or online, free online classroom. Anyone can join. They just have to register. And this is our early warning system. Next slide. So anyone that is part of the swine sector has to become involved and aware. So that's why it's important to first identify them, because they are basically sensors that convey information if they confront any sort of clinical symptoms. And they don't necessarily need to report a diagnosis, but just reporting symptoms is enough to be able to control any outbreak or possible potential outbreak. So we use all the links in the chain for this.
Sistema sanitario. Siguiente.
And any officers within the animal health system as well. So we can't work as a silo. We always have to emphasize working together and having a system of, let's say, checks and balances. We work with ICA in Colombia. We train individuals in identify any unusual activity and make sure that everyone's aware and keep everyone abreast of any new information or new data reported, and emphasize immunization programs and connecting with Port Colombia staff. Next. So this is Port Colombia's early warning system. So we've worked together with the board of directors. We spoke about an ICA compensation fund, right? In the event of denoting any emergencies. If that fund is insufficient, given the large size of swine production in Colombia, then, as a result, the Colombian board of directors of Port Colombia, decided to come up with their own fund. And what they use is deposit 6% of the swine production fund. We deposit that and keep it in a fund that earns interest. In the event that an outbreak or disease occurs, the pork producer will know that they can access this fund, that they can go to Port Columbia and not be wary of reporting any emergencies and not have economic constraints as a result. So that way, economic reporting won't be a deterrent, and we can motivate individuals to report any abnormalities. So, as support, we provide epidemiological studies at border sites. We work with small producers as well. We work with slaughterhouses. We also have production fairs where animals circulate, and we try to raise awareness with regard to that. Because many times different animals from different yards will be present at one site. And so we have results, obtained results, results at slaughterhouses, swine-free areas. So notifications in, we also have free zones. We call these AFS free zones. So our PPC system is organized in different compartments, for example. And these compartments or these areas work with swine production for AFS specifically. We also try to develop this system based on classic swine fever on CFS. And the idea was that if there was a positive result, that the whole system would continue to function and not kind of break down and containment occur and not lose the AFS status of an AFS free zone or CFS free zone. So I end my presentation here. Thanks so much for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias, Corina. Realmente muy interesante.
Very interesting, Corina.
Como ven, realmente todo se interrelaciona, todo se fusiona.
Everything is interrelated and merged, and we understand that if there isn't a good preparation or good incentives for producers, it will be hard to be able to have a proper reporting or consistent reporting. So I think training is key. So as you mentioned that, thank you for conveying your experience in Colombia. So we're going to continue with our questions and answers session. So remember, during the webinar, my colleagues have been working and placing links to the platform. So you can enter there and be able to, understand monthly webinars and just continuously train. So the first question is for Dr. Aurelio Cabezas, and it is from El Salvador. And the question is as follows: is there a date where the WAHIS notification app will return? Is there a date for the return of the WAHIS notification app? Okay. When we speak about the app, do you mean the mobile phone app? Yes, we do. Well, as of now, our WAHIS team is now working on this. I can't give you a specific date as to when it will return, because right now we're working on optimizing the system to improve platform performance on the normal website. So we plan to be able to have this app ready very soon, but we've had some, well, this is a very heavy, difficult website to manage or platform to manage, but we're optimizing the web platform. So right now, I don't have a specific result or a specific date as to when the app will be up and running again, but it's part of the plans.
Muchas gracias, doctor. Acá nos hacen otra pregunta para usted también.
We have another question for you.
Una especie de caso.
It's a case.
Entonces, se lee así.
So let me just read it. And it's by Nimer Guzman. So an outbreak report is reported. It impacts the facility, and then the following week the neighboring facility is impacted, and the animals are contaged. Now, is this considered to be a new outbreak, or how many animals have to be impacted for it to be an outbreak? Okay, thank you, Nima, for the question. It's an excellent question of something that I forgot to mention during my presentation. So it has to do with epidemiological levels in the country. So in this case, I assume that the epidemiological unit will if this is a farm, if it's been identified as a farm, and the diseased animals occur at this farm, and the neighboring farm is impacted, or the neighboring production site, then it would be a new event. The country itself has to establish the limit, the epidemiological limit. So this encompasses a broader range, outbreaks that is, with animals with different owners that, for example, everything is related to the veterinary service. For example, a group of associations may unite to report together. But your case this would be considered just a new case, a new event. Another question for you, Dr. Aurelio. So we're being asked, what general recommendations would you give official veterinary services with regard to WOAH notifications? General recommendations that you would give official veterinary services in different countries with regard to the notification system for the WOAH. Okay, what I could say, well, I can't make specific recommendations as to how to report events. I can't specify how interactions have to take place with regard to producers and official country services. It depends on each production system, on how the type of management that you have. But we have specific procedures available in our website. But it's important for everyone to be aware as to the procedures so that they can appropriately notify and send their notifications, and their validation period be as short as possible. Because sometimes we have reports that do take time to be validated because the official systems many times don't know what the notification procedures are. And that's my recommendation in this case. So we're always ready to collaborate on our part. We maintain a good communication with focal points in all of our countries. But please, if you have any doubts, let us know. Okay, there's another question for you.
Here we have if only workers connected to animal health can enter the data into the WOAH or any other person. Hugo Soto, that's a very good question. No, it's available for the public at large. As I was showing in the demo, we saw the public interface. So all of the data are available, and it is available for the public at large, not just for for academic sector, for the public in general, for specialists. So it is a public interface open to the public.
Perfecto. Muchísimas gracias, doctor Aurelio. La siguiente pregunta va para la doctora
Dr.
Susana.
Aurelio, for Susana Ureña is the next question. An important point to clarify, I think, because it can be interpreted in two possible ways. The information that Aurelio presented at the time can be accessed by everyone because it is the public interface where you can access the information that each country in the world has provided within that platform. However, the country nominates a focal point for notification officially, and that is one person nominated by the delegate who is supervised by the delegate, and they supply that information and data to the WOAH portal for the publication of information. It's important to clarify that because sometimes people that interpret that anyone can enter the information. I mean, there is a person nominated by the country. Thank you. Thank you, Katia, for that clarification.
Listo, sí, muchas gracias, Katia.
Thank you, Katia.
Ok, entonces vamos a continuar con la doctora Ureña. Por acá nos
Dr.
pregunta
Ureña, we have a question regarding the rural area and if there are people dedicated to the slaughter of pigs. And in some countries, they are known as home-based abattoirs or home abattoirs. How do you recommend approaching the control or surveillance of carcasses in that type of non-official establishments? In Costa Rica, we have official slaughters that take place in official abattoirs or slaughterhouses approved by SENASA, all the abattoirs where these sacrifices take place. And in other places, slaughters take place for self-consumption. That in general is for backyard production where they have 2 or 3 pigs and they kill them to eat them for Christmas, for example. So there is no commercialization of that product. It is just to consume within the family. And sometimes there is slaughter for sale, and in Costa Rica, that is considered clandestine or illegitimate slaughters. So those products, both for pigs and any other swine origin products or any type of thing like this, when there is a mobilization of these products, they have to do official documentation. The documents are delivered to the slaughterhouse when the carcass is there, and then we have the official guidelines of SENASA. So we know that there is an illegal slaughter going on, but we try to collect reports because it usually happens in December, usually, that they used to slaughter and they sell them via Facebook. Yes, they post on Facebook that they will sell the pig already slaughtered. So in those cases, we try to intervene to give them share this order, explaining that they cannot do this. We've tried to give much importance to veterinary inspections in slaughterhouses in Costa Rica. For example, municipal abattoirs no longer exist. We used to have municipal abattoirs that were not fully inspected. Now we are looking to have all the pigs slaughtered in official slaughterhouses where there are inspections that guarantee the process. We know that slaughter for self-consumption is very difficult to eradicate because it is part of the culture of the family. You know, they have them grow and then they slaughter it for consumption. But sometimes it is minimized because it was consumed in that same place. But the people must see the value added of having the inspection because not only will they see a possibility of detecting CSF or ASF, but also those pigs could have other diseases that we are trying to control. For example, other diseases. So it could be an important zoonosis. So in slaughterhouses, we still do a full inspection of opening the muscles, of opening the heart to try to find the parasites. And when we realized that there had been slaughters for self-consumption, and the producer says that they found these cysts, but they don't know what they are, they still consume them without paying any attention to it. So when we do the trainings, we give much importance to surveillance, the importance of slaughter in authorized establishment, because this involves an additional health check for consumers. But actually, the slaughters that take place in non-approved establishments are considered illegal in the country.
Muchísimas gracias, doctora Ureña.
Thank you.
Espero que con esta respuesta hayamos aclarado la
I
duda.
hope that this answer clarified that
Acá
doubt.
hay más preguntas para usted.
There is
Dice
another
así,
question for you
de parte de Gillian Ellis. Dice,
from
hay
Gillian
información
Ellis,
sobre la
who
visita
says the
al sitio
information
del
on the
evento
visit
y
to
el
the
lugar
site where the event
es
has taken
ingresada en
place,
tiempo real
is
al
this
sistema.
entered in real time into the system? Yes and no. The people who go to the field visits have tablets, and they may be conducting the visit and entering the information in real time. But when we work with the reports, we try to avoid the entering of electronic articles, because they may create problems in the future. So what we look for is to compile the information immediately in order to submit the samples, and they need to be entered into the CIVE system. It's usually a matter of hours between the visit and the moment where the information is entered. Maybe it's not real time 100%, but it's just a matter of few hours. After the visit, a few hours later, it is entered into the system. This is when we deal with reports. When it's active surveillance, sometimes they coordinate the samplings and they take some time in certain places. And when it's active surveillance, the samples are entered 2 or 3 days after they were taken. But in the case of reports, we try for this to be immediate so that they can be processed ASAP.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias, doctora Ureña. También tenemos
Thank you
aquí
very
una
much,
pregunta
Dr.
de
Ureña. We have a
Amanda
question
Martínez.
here from
Dice
Amanda
así,
Martinez,
¿existe algún
who asks the
protocolo o
following: Is there
sistema de
any
prevención
protocol
ante la
or
existencia de
prevention
una enfermedad?
system if in the case of disease? SENASA trains producers not just to recognize and notify or slaughters. When we do the trainings, we give them the signs to pay attention for, and also macroscopic, yes, what the viscera may show, so that if they start doing necropsis or other slaughters, they can identify that the doctor taught us this could be suspicious. But in those trainings, in addition to giving the information, they also share prevention measures, which sometimes focus on good practices and biosecurity practices. So the importance of fencing, the importance of closing the gates, of disinfecting vehicles before they enter the establishment, avoiding people who are not from the farm, even if it's backyard farms. In our country, we have it is allowed to provide food, but it has to be heated at 70 degrees when it's waste or discards from restaurants, for example. So they have to have a certain process to heat up that waste, and that is for biosecurity measures for preventions. At a country level, we have surveillance strategies for imports, trying to control the illegal imports of merchandise of swine origin. And our borders are permeable, but the operations, together with our institutions, are aimed at avoiding the illegal introduction of animals and products that could be contaminated and which could pose a risk. But overall, the prevention measures are aimed at improving biosecurity and good practices, so that if the neighbor has a virus, then because of the good practices and biosecurity, they're not affected by the
Muchísimas
disease.
gracias, doctora. Y
Thank you
acá hay
very
otra
much,
pregunta
doctor.
que dice así.
There's another
¿Qué
question
acciones
here.
estratégicas
what strategic actions would be recommended for other countries for the implementation and improvement of the epidemiological surveillance system? At the level of surveillance, other countries have fairs and auctions. So I would think it's an important point to do surveillance at those points. So oftentimes there are people who manage those things and give them tools to identify CSF or give them tools to differentiate ASF from CSF. What are the signs and symptoms that we could observe? And part of the inspection as well. So it is not necessary to just take samples. We may say that we are doing clinical surveillance of the disease. So through the non-detection of signs in those animals, we could be registering the disease. And if there is a suspicion, we could associate them to the official notification or the samples that are presented so that we can have the entire system. The system that we have for surveillance, including detection, clinical surveillance, and also active surveillance at the level of the slaughterhouse, all of this facilitates the surveillance activity. We also have samplings on the farms throughout the country, but we know that in Costa Rica, 900,000 pigs are slaughtered every year. So it's a very small percentage. But these are 900,000 carcasses that are inspected throughout the year. So if in those 900,000 animals the virus was not detected, maybe on small farms where they're being slaughtered, those might have to do with the active surveillance samples. So if the countries that have auctions or have fairs, I would try to do the training and also associate them with those who are doing passive surveillance as well. So we try to include the full productive chain, also with clandestine slaughters and the importance of official inspections so that they can do this type of surveillance in these establishments to have better control over the notification of the diseases.
Perfecto. Y aquí en el chat tenemos por parte de Hugo Soto.
Here we have Hugo Soto.
Dos preguntas.
Two questions.
Pregunta que hasta donde va avanzando todo el
So,
del brote de peste porcina africana.
Everywhere where the disease is advancing, what is the chance of contagion of ASF between a domestic pig and a wild swine or a wild boar?
Esa se la hace a usted, doctora Ureña.
So that's for you, Dr. Ureña. Is it for you?
En realidad, la OMS ha establecido que los cerdos, en el caso de Saíno, pensaría que son los pecaríes.
One would think that those wild boars are not susceptible. There is a type that is not susceptible to ASF, but in general, there is no distinction. That's why it is important to use fencing. In Talamanca, for example, in Costa Rica, we have places where pigs, they're like dogs, you know, they go here and there with their owners, but that puts the health of the animals at risk. So even though certain species, the pecaríes, are not susceptible to ASF, they may be transmitting other diseases. We don't know their status for other diseases, leptospira, etc. So they could be transmitting diseases of importance to our domestic pigs. So it's very important to avoid the contact between our domestic pigs and these pecaríes or wild pigs, because in domestic establishments, sometimes we've seen cases that one case was affected and it affected other wild species because the wild species are not subject to this contention point and all of these things. So that's something that we try to control. Yes, trying to contain the animals and avoid the contact with animals that are outside the farm and with people who are outside the farm, and vehicles that are not from the farm, and all the other possible sources of contamination.
Muchísimas gracias. La siguiente pregunta,
Thank you very much.
doctor
Next
Hugo,
question
creo que podría
is
ser para Ureña como
could be for
principal
Dr.
experto.
Ureña and Dr. Aurelio as well.
Pregunta sobre cómo va el avance
They're
de
asking
biológicos para el
about
control de peste
what
porcina
is
africana. No sé
the
si alguno de
level of
ustedes
progress for
se
biologicals
quiere
in the
referir a
control of this
esto.
diseases. I don't know if you want to answer
La
this,
doctora Ureña, no sé si usted
Dr.
nos conoce.
Ureña.
A nivel de las perlas que nos han dado, han dicho de que están haciendo todavía pruebas, que todavía estos procesos
We've heard that they're continuing with the tests. I think that in the Dominican Republic, they said they were going to start with the samples, but actually now in the trainings that we provide, we've said that there is no vaccination for ASF. So it's better to keep it that way.
Por lo que han dicho, todavía está en procesos de investigación.
And it is still being researched. So there's research being done. I know that in China, there were some vaccines that worked sometimes and other times it didn't work. So it didn't really avoid the transmission of the disease. So for now, there is no treatment or cure. So let's prevent them with biosecurity, good practices. And when there is a vaccine, this could be another tool for its control. It's better to apply these measures than to suffer from the disease.
No sé si el doctor Aurelio quiere agregar algo.
No, la verdad que no, Erika. Yo creo que Susana cubrió perfectamente.
I think Susana covered the response in full. I have nothing to add.
Muchas gracias.
Okay,
La
thank you
última
very
pregunta para
much.
usted, doctora Ureña, de parte de McAllister.
So Dr. Ureña, Dr. McAllister congratulates all the speakers and asks, is there any surveillance by SENASA on farms where the cooking takes place, where the cooking of waste takes place for feeding the pigs? And is there any control of these establishments? In the inspections, we apply Annex 2, which is a checklist that establishes the conditions that need to be fulfilled by the farms, and it depends on the size. So for those products, we verify that they have a place to cook the waste and that they cook them for the sufficient amount of time, because in general, they have that method. And oftentimes, we're not there for the process. Sometimes they have, the cooking stove, and we have certain prohibitions. For example, it is not allowed to feed pigs with products that come from airports or airplanes or boats, yes, or vessels. So that is not allowed. And the risk is that if some food that came with a tourist ended up in a restaurant, and from that restaurant they got to the pigs. So with that heating and cooking process, we would be avoiding the risk. The inspections take place by applying Annex 2. And many backyard establishments usually use these products to feed the animals. So they are in general associated with active surveillance programs and passive surveillance as well. So they are subject to sampling, but if there is a sampling needed and they were selected, then they could be associated to the sampling. As for controls, when we do the inspections, we can see how they manage the products. Sometimes they are byproducts, which due to their origin, they are not meat products or pork products, but sometimes there's a mismanagement of products which are rotten maybe and are not apt for feeding pigs. So in that case, they are ordered to change their practices to manage this waste. Thank you. Dr. Zambrano, next question is for you. Have you been able to measure the change in behavior for producers who didn't used to notify and now do? And what tools did you use to measure that change?
That measurement as such is very, very difficult. One thing we have done is to classify pig farmers in different stages: advanced level, intermediate level, and basic level. And with that, when they've spent some time with those modules and with those trainings, we elevate them to intermediate level. So that's how we deal with the biosecurity measures and what I've mentioned in regards to gold, silver, and bronze. And this is because we have created this based on a hypothesis that we will not be affected by ASF. And in the case of CSF, 95% of our production is free from CSF. So far, of course, we hope there are no notifications, but if any, this has to exist. Yes. Thank you very much. And with this, we will reach the end of our Q&A session. There are certain questions remaining, but you can leave your questions in the chat and we will convey them to the speakers. We have gone over the allotted time, but we would like to thank the three excellent panelists today. Thank you very much for your predisposition and for collaborating with this interagency group. And thank you for helping us bring this training to all the countries and institutions. So let me remind you that all of this information, all of this training information is hosted in the website and in the platform that we've shared throughout the seminar. Thank you also to all the institutions because we have developed all of this together and have made an effort to make these webinars a reality and really bring you the adequate information and specialists. There is a second part to this webinar. It will have a very interesting dynamic, and it will share different approaches as to how the notification mechanisms take place throughout the hemisphere. And it's August 29. So please come and share the information so that more people can participate. Thank you again. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Ureña, Dr. Aurelio, and Dr. Corina. Thank you very much. Thank you, Katia, Rocio, and everyone who has helped us and collaborated with us today. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.